The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the streets of Oak Ridge. It was one of those late afternoons where the air felt thick, heavy with humidity, and the distant hum of traffic. Lisa Carter gripped the steering wheel lightly, her fingers drumming against it to the rhythm of the old jazz song playing softly on the radio. She liked driving this time of day. It gave her a moment to unwind after a long afternoon of meetings and phone calls. Lisa had spent most of her life in Oak Grove, a mid-sized city that prided itself on being progressive and forward-thinking. But she knew better than anyone that progress wasn't always what it seemed. Beneath the polished facades of downtown skyscrapers and the carefully curated social media posts lay cracks, deep ones. Cracks filled with inequality, prejudice, and moments like the one about to unfold. As she approached the intersection of Maple Street and 8th Avenue, Lisa noticed a flicker of red and blue lights in her rearview mirror. At first she thought they belonged to a passing ambulance or fire truck, but then the flashing lights grew brighter, closer, until they were unmistakably aimed at her. Sighing, Lisa eased her car to the side of the road and turned off the engine. She glanced at herself briefly in the rearview mirror, smoothing down her hair and adjusting the collar of her blouse. She hadn't done anything wrong, she was sure of it, but experience had taught her that preparation mattered. Being pulled over by the police wasn't just about following rules. It was about how you carried yourself, how you spoke, even how you breathed. For someone like Lisa, these small details could make all the difference. The officer stepped out of his patrol car, his silhouette outlined against the fading light. He moved slowly, deliberately, his boots clicking against the pavement as he approached her vehicle. Lisa rolled down her window before he reached her door, hoping to show cooperation. The cool night breeze drifted in, carrying with it the faint smell of exhaust fumes and damp asphalt. "License and registration," came the voice, sharp and clipped. Officer Greg Miller leaned down slightly to peer into the car, his face partially hidden behind the brim of his cap. His tone left no room for politeness, only command. Lisa nodded, reaching into her purse for her wallet. "Of course," she said, keeping her voice steady. "May I ask why I've been stopped?" Miller didn't answer immediately. Instead, he scanned the interior of the car, his eyes lingering on the dashboard, the back seat, and finally Lisa herself. There was something unsettling about the way he looked at her. Not quite hostile, but not neutral either. It was the kind of gaze that made your skin crawl without ever touching you. "You've got a broken taillight," he said eventually, straightening up. "Didn't you notice it?" Lisa frowned, turning her head slightly to glance at her rearview mirror again. Both taillights were working perfectly fine, they always were. She took great care of her car, both because she loved it and because she couldn't afford any excuses for scrutiny. Still, arguing wouldn't help. "Not here, not now. I'll have it checked when I get home," she replied calmly, handing over her license and registration. "Thank you for letting me know." Miller accepted the documents but didn't move away. Instead, he stood there, studying them as if searching for something more than just names and numbers. After what felt like an eternity, he finally spoke again. "So what brings you to this neighborhood?" he asked, his tone casual but probing. "Don't see many people like you around here." Lisa stiffened slightly at the comment. People like her? What did that mean exactly? She lived less than 10 minutes away. This wasn't some exclusive gated community. It was a public street in her own city. Yet she forced herself to stay composed, knowing that reacting emotionally would only escalate things. "I'm heading home," she said simply. "I had a meeting nearby." Miller raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced. "A meeting? At this hour? Must be important." "It was," Lisa replied, her patience starting to wear thin. "Is there anything else, officer? I'd really like to get going soon." Instead of answering, Miller shifted his weight, resting one hand on his utility belt. The gesture was subtle, almost unconscious, but it sent a clear message. He was in control here, and he wanted her to remember it. "You know," he began, his voice dropping slightly, "we've been getting reports lately about suspicious activity in this area." Folks who don't belong, if you catch my drift. Lisa blinked, unsure whether to laugh or cry. Suspicious activity? Did he seriously think she fit that description? She was dressed professionally, driving a clean car and minding her own business. None of that screamed suspicious unless you were looking for reasons to believe otherwise. I understand you're doing your job, she said carefully, choosing her words with precision. But I assure you, I'm not causing any trouble. Miller smirked, though it lacked warmth. Trouble has a way of finding people, doesn't it? The comment hung in the air, heavy and loaded. Lisa clenched her jaw, resisting the urge to snap back. She reminded herself that this wasn't about him. It was about surviving the encounter unscathed. That was the goal, wasn't it? To walk away without incident, no matter how infuriating the process might be. After a few more moments of uncomfortable silence, Miller handed back her documents. Be careful out there, he said, his tone dripping with insincerity. And fix that taillight. Next time I might not be so lenient. With that, he turned and walked back to his patrol car, leaving Lisa sitting alone in hers. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the steering wheel, the adrenaline still coursing through her veins. Lenient. Was that what he called this? A baseless stop, a series of thinly veiled accusations, and a reminder that she didn't belong. All wrapped up in the guise of routine policing? As the patrol car pulled away, Lisa exhaled deeply, trying to steady her breathing. She glanced in the rearview mirror once more, watching the red and blue lights disappear into the distance. Then, with a shaky hand, she reached for her phone. She needed to tell Marcus about this, not because she expected him to fix it, but because she needed someone to listen, someone who would understand. Lisa sat on the edge of their worn but comfortable couch, staring at the wall as she replayed the incident over and over in her mind. Her heart was still racing. Though the encounter had ended nearly 20 minutes ago, she could feel the weight of it pressing down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. With trembling fingers, she dialed Marcus's number, hoping he'd pick up quickly. He always did when she called during work hours. He knew how much it meant to her that he was just a call away. The phone rang twice before Marcus answered. His deep voice came through the speaker, calm and steady as always. Hey love, everything okay? Lisa hesitated for a moment, unsure where to start. How could she explain what had happened without sounding like she was overreacting? But then again, why should she have to sugarcoat anything? What Officer Miller had done wasn't right, and Marcus deserved to know the truth. Not really, she admitted finally, her voice quieter than usual. I got pulled over on my way home. Marcus's tone shifted immediately. What? Are you all right? Did something happen? I'm fine, Lisa assured him, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her attempt at composure. But it wasn't about a broken taillight or speeding or anything like that. It felt wrong. Like he stopped me because I didn't fit some picture he had in his head. She went on to describe the encounter in detail. The officer's dismissive tone, the intrusive questions about her presence in her own neighborhood, the thinly veiled insinuations that she didn't belong. As she spoke, she could hear Marcus exhale sharply on the other end of the line. That sounds like racial profiling, he said, his voice tight with controlled anger. Do you remember his name? Miller, Lisa replied. Officer Greg Miller. I saw it on his badge when he handed back my license. There was a pause on the other end of the line, long enough for Lisa to wonder if Marcus was processing what she'd said, or maybe even doubting her account. But then he spoke again, his tone firm and resolute. I'll look into it, he promised. This kind of behavior can't go unchecked. If this guy has a history of misconduct, we need to know. Lisa nodded, even though Marcus couldn't see her. Thank you, she whispered. I needed someone to hear me, you know? To believe me. I believe you, Marcus said without hesitation, and I'll make sure this doesn't get swept under the rug. You're not alone in this. After hanging up, Lisa leaned back against the couch, feeling a mix of relief and frustration. On one hand, talking to Marcus helped. She trusted him completely, and his promise to investigate gave her a small sense of hope. On the other hand, she hated that these kinds of conversations were necessary in the first place. Why should she have to rely on her husband's position within the police department to seek justice? Her thoughts were interrupted by a knock at the door. Startled, Lisa glanced at the clock. It was too early for Marcus to be home. Grabbing her phone, she walked cautiously to the door and peered through the peephole. Standing on the other side was Angela, her best friend since college. Angela must have sensed something was off because as soon as Lisa opened the door, she stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. "You look like you've seen a ghost," Angela said bluntly, closing the door behind her. "What's going on?" Lisa hesitated for a split second before deciding to tell Angela everything. They settled onto the couch together, and Lisa recounted the traffic stop, mimicking Miller's sarcastic tone and describing the way he'd made her feel small and powerless. By the time she finished, Angela's eyes were blazing with indignation. "That's unbelievable," Angela exclaimed, throwing up her hands. "Who does this guy think he is? You shouldn't have to deal with that kind of crap just for driving while black." "I know," Lisa agreed, tears welling up in her eyes despite her efforts to stay strong. "But what am I supposed to do? File a complaint? Go public? I don't want to cause trouble for Marcus, and honestly, I'm scared of retaliation." Angela placed a comforting hand on Lisa's shoulder. "I get it, trust me, I do. But you can't let people like Miller win. If you don't say something, nothing will change. And besides, you're not alone. You've got Marcus, you've got me, and you've got the whole community backing you up." Lisa wiped her eyes, considering Angela's words. She knew her friend was right. Silence only emboldened people like Miller. Still, the thought of putting herself out there, of becoming a target, terrified her. She'd worked so hard to build a life for herself, to carve out a space where she felt safe and respected. Could she risk losing that? While Lisa wrestled with her doubts, Marcus was already taking action. Back at the precinct, he flagged down Detective Laura Hayes, a seasoned investigator known for her sharp instincts and unwavering ethics. Laura had been with the force for nearly 2 decades, and she'd earned Marcus's trust long ago. "Got a minute?" Marcus asked, motioning for Laura to follow him to a quiet corner of the office. Laura raised an eyebrow but obliged. "Sure. What's up?" "It's personal," Marcus began, lowering his voice. "My wife was pulled over earlier today by an officer named Greg Miller. From what she described, it sounds like racial profiling and possibly harassment." Laura frowned, jotting down the name in her notebook. "Greg Miller, huh? I've heard whispers about him before. Let me dig into his file and see if there's a pattern." True to her word, Laura wasted no time. Within hours, she uncovered a troubling trail of complaints filed against Miller, all alleging similar behaviors: targeting minorities, using excessive force, and showing blatant disrespect. None of the cases had resulted in disciplinary action, largely due to lack of evidence or witnesses willing to testify. When Marcus reviewed the findings later that evening, his jaw tightened with resolve. This wasn't just about Lisa anymore. It was about exposing a toxic culture within the department. Officers like Miller thrived because they believed they were untouchable. But Marcus was determined to prove them wrong. That night after dinner, Marcus sat down with Lisa to discuss their next steps. "We have options," he explained gently. "We could file a formal complaint internally, which might lead to an investigation. Or we could take this outside the department entirely, go public, involve the media. Either way, we need to decide what feels right for you." Lisa listened carefully, weighing each possibility. Filing a complaint seemed safer, more contained. Going public, on the other hand, would shine a spotlight on the issue, but it also carried risks. She thought about Angela's earlier words: "If you don't say something, nothing will change." Finally, she looked up at Marcus, her expression resolute. "Let's start with the complaint," she said. "But if nothing happens, if they try to sweep this under the rug, we go bigger. No matter what, I'm done staying silent." Marcus smiled faintly, pride shining in his eyes. "Whatever you choose, I'm with you every step of the way." As they prepared for the days ahead, neither of them realized just how far-reaching the consequences of their decision would be. Change rarely came easily, especially when it challenged deeply entrenched systems of power. But for Lisa and Marcus, this was about more than one bad cop. It was about standing up for dignity, accountability, and the belief that everyone deserved to feel safe in their own city. For now, they focused on the plan, knowing that tomorrow would bring new challenges. Together, they faced the uncertainty with courage, united by love and a shared vision of justice. The days following Lisa's decision to file a formal complaint were filled with quiet preparation. Marcus worked tirelessly behind the scenes, gathering evidence and strategizing with Detective Laura Hayes. They knew that taking on someone like Officer Greg Miller wouldn't be easy, especially since he seemed to have slipped through the cracks of accountability time and again. But this time they had something different: undeniable proof, witnesses, and most importantly, Lisa's unwavering determination. As part of their plan, Marcus suggested using an upcoming community meeting hosted by the police department as a platform to expose Miller's misconduct. These meetings were designed to foster trust between law enforcement and the public, but Marcus saw an opportunity to turn the tables. If Miller showed up, which he likely would, given his assignment to patrol the area, they could catch him off guard and reveal the truth in front of everyone. Lisa wasn't thrilled about being thrust into the spotlight, but she understood the necessity. "If we're going to do this," she told Marcus one evening, "we need to make sure it counts. No half measures." Marcus nodded, squeezing her hand reassuringly. "We'll handle it together. I won't let anything happen to you." On the night of the meeting, Lisa arrived early, accompanied by Angela and a small group of activists who had agreed to support her cause. The venue was a large auditorium located in the heart of Oak Ridge, its walls adorned with posters promoting unity and justice. Rows of folding chairs filled the space, slowly filling up with residents eager to voice their concerns or simply observe. Lisa took a seat near the front, clutching a folder containing copies of the evidence against Miller. She glanced around, nervously noting the mix of faces, young and old, black and white, all united by a shared desire for change. Cameras flashed intermittently as local journalists set up tripods ready to capture the proceedings. Meanwhile, unbeknownst to Lisa, Officer Miller stood outside the building, leaning casually against his patrol car. He'd been assigned to monitor the event, though his presence felt more like intimidation than protection. As people filed past him, some shot wary glances in his direction, while others ignored him altogether. Inside, Marcus arrived shortly before the meeting began. Dressed in his full police uniform, complete with badges and insignias marking his rank as captain, he exuded authority, yet his expression was warm as he approached Lisa, offering her a reassuring smile. "You ready?" he asked softly, crouching beside her chair. "As ready as I'll ever be," Lisa replied, forcing a weak grin. Her stomach churned with anxiety, but she reminded herself why she was here, not just for herself but for everyone who had faced similar injustices. When the meeting officially started, a senior officer stepped up to the podium to introduce the agenda. Topics ranged from updates on recent crime rates to discussions about improving community police relations. It wasn't until midway through the program that Lisa's moment arrived. "Next, we'll hear from Lisa Carter, a valued member of our community," the officer announced, gesturing toward her. "Ms. Carter has prepared a statement regarding her recent experience with law enforcement." Lisa rose from her seat, her legs feeling like jelly beneath her. Taking a deep breath, she walked to the podium, gripping its edges for stability. The room fell silent, every eye fixed on her. She scanned the crowd briefly, finding strength in the supportive nods and encouraging smiles directed her way. "Good evening," she began, her voice steady despite the nerves coursing through her veins. "My name is Lisa Carter, and I'm here today because I believe transparency and accountability are essential for building trust between the police and the communities they serve." She paused, allowing her words to sink in. Then, with deliberate clarity, she recounted the incident with Officer Greg Miller, the baseless traffic stop, the condescending tone, the invasive questions about her presence in her own neighborhood. Each detail painted a vivid picture of humiliation and injustice. I'm not sharing my story to vilify anyone, Lisa continued, her gaze sweeping across the room. I'm sharing it because experiences like mine are far too common, and if we don't address them openly and honestly, they will continue to erode the relationship between law enforcement and the people they're meant to protect. The audience erupted into murmurs of agreement, some nodding vigorously while others exchanged knowing looks. Cameras clicked incessantly, capturing every word. Just then, the doors at the back of the auditorium swung open, and Officer Miller entered, clearly unaware of what was happening inside. His eyes widened slightly as he realized all attention was focused on Lisa. Slowly, he made his way to an empty seat near the front, his posture stiff with unease. Lisa noticed him immediately, but didn't falter. Instead, she turned slightly, locking eyes with him. "Officer Miller," she said, her voice ringing out loud and clear. "Do you remember pulling me over last week? Do you recall how you questioned whether I belonged in my own neighborhood?" Miller froze, his face reddening as whispers rippled through the crowd. He opened his mouth to respond, but Lisa pressed on, refusing to give him the upper hand. "You might think your actions were justified," she said, her tone firm yet composed. "But let me assure you they weren't. What you did wasn't just unprofessional, it was wrong, and I'm not the only one who thinks so." At that moment, Marcus stepped forward, his commanding presence silencing any potential rebuttal from Miller. Standing beside Lisa, he addressed the audience. "As a police captain, I take these allegations very seriously," he declared. "After reviewing Officer Miller's record, we've discovered a troubling pattern of behavior, including multiple complaints of racial profiling and excessive force. This cannot and will not be tolerated." The room erupted into applause, the sound reverberating off the walls. Journalists scrambled to capture footage of the unfolding drama, while attendees exchanged astonished glances. Miller sat frozen, his earlier bravado replaced by sheer panic. For Lisa, the moment was surreal. She had imagined confronting Miller countless times since the traffic stop, rehearsing what she would say in her head, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of standing there, surrounded by allies, watching as the weight of accountability finally bore down on him. As the meeting drew to a close, organizers urged attendees to stay engaged in the fight for reform. Flyers were distributed outlining steps individuals could take to advocate for policy changes within the police department. Lisa lingered near the podium, shaking hands and exchanging contact information with supporters. Outside, the air was cool and crisp, a welcome contrast to the heated energy inside the auditorium. Marcus joined Lisa, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "You did amazing," he said, pride evident in his voice. "This is just the beginning." Lisa nodded, exhaustion mingling with relief. "It feels good to fight back," she admitted, "but we still have a long way to go." Indeed, the road ahead promised challenges. Complaints would need to be processed, investigations conducted, and reforms implemented. But for now, Lisa allowed herself a small measure of satisfaction. For the first time in days, she felt like she was truly making a difference, not just for herself, but for everyone who deserved better. And as the crowd dispersed, carrying the story of Lisa's courage with them, the ripple effects of her bravery began to spread throughout Oak Ridge, igniting conversations and sparking hope for a brighter future. The days following the community meeting were a whirlwind of activity for Lisa, Marcus, and everyone involved in exposing Officer Greg Miller's misconduct. The video footage of Lisa's speech had gone viral online, sparking outrage across Oak Ridge and beyond. Local news outlets picked up the story, airing clips of the confrontation alongside interviews with residents who shared similar experiences of mistreatment by law enforcement. For many, it was a wake-up call, a stark reminder that systemic issues within policing weren't just abstract concepts. They affected real people every single day. Officer Miller, on the other hand, found himself at the center of a storm he couldn't escape. His attempts to downplay the incident during the meeting had backfired spectacularly. Instead of defending himself, he'd come across as defensive and cornered, a man caught red-handed. Within hours, Internal Affairs launched a formal investigation into his conduct, using the evidence gathered by Marcus and Detective Laura Hayes as the foundation for their probe. At the precinct, tensions ran high. Some officers whispered about how Miller had brought shame upon the department, while others dismissed the allegations as exaggerated or politically motivated. But there was no denying the mounting pressure from both within and outside the force. Community leaders demanded answers, and protests erupted outside the police station, with demonstrators chanting slogans like, "No justice, no peace," and holding signs that read, "Hold bad cops accountable." For Lisa, the aftermath was emotionally draining. While she felt vindicated knowing that her voice had been heard, the constant media attention took its toll. Reporters camped outside her, home eager for sound bites. Social media buzzed with debates about her case, some supportive and others dismissive. Angela stayed by her side throughout, helping her navigate the chaos and reminding her to focus on the bigger picture. "You've already done so much," Angela said one evening as they sat together on Lisa's couch, scrolling through updates on her phone. "Don't let the noise distract you. This isn't just about you anymore, it's about changing the system." Lisa nodded, though she couldn't shake the weight of responsibility pressing down on her shoulders. She knew Angela was right. The movement had grown far beyond her personal experience, but that didn't make it any easier to bear. Meanwhile, Marcus juggled his roles as both Lisa's husband and a leader within the police department. He attended countless meetings with senior officials, pushing for transparency and accountability in the investigation. Behind closed doors, he faced resistance from colleagues who accused him of undermining the force's reputation. But Marcus refused to back down. "This isn't about loyalty to the badge," he told them firmly during one particularly heated discussion. "It's about doing what's right, for the community, for the department, and for ourselves. If we don't root out bad actors like Miller, we lose credibility, and once trust is broken, it's nearly impossible to rebuild." His words resonated with some, but not all. Still, Marcus remained steadfast, determined to see justice served, not just for Lisa, but for everyone who deserved better. Back at Internal Affairs, the investigation unfolded methodically yet intensely. Officers combed through years of records, piecing together a damning portrait of Greg Miller's career. Complaints poured in from former victims, each recounting incidents eerily similar to Lisa's: baseless traffic stops, hostile questioning, and outright disrespect. One woman, tearfully, described being handcuffed and detained for hours over a minor infraction. Another recounted how Miller had mocked her accent, implying she didn't belong in the city. Detective Laura Hayes played a pivotal role in organizing the evidence, presenting it clearly and concisely to the review board. During one session, she stood before a projection screen displaying charts and timelines, pointing out patterns that left little room for doubt. "These aren't isolated incidents," Laura explained, her tone firm but professional. "They're part of a consistent pattern of behavior, one that violates our core values as a department. Ignoring this would be a disservice to the badge and the people we swore to protect." As the investigation progressed, Miller became increasingly desperate. He tried to rally support among his peers, painting himself as a victim of political correctness and cancel culture. But few were willing to stand by him, especially when confronted with irrefutable proof of his actions. Even those who might have sympathized privately knew better than to risk their own reputations by associating with him. Finally, after weeks of deliberation, the review board reached a verdict. Miller was stripped of his badge, fired from the department, and referred to criminal prosecutors for potential charges related to abuse of power and civil rights violations. The announcement sent shockwaves through Oak Ridge, igniting celebrations among activists and concerned citizens alike. For Lisa, the news brought a mix of relief and sadness. Relief because Miller would no longer wield authority over innocent people. Sadness because the fight wasn't truly over. There were still countless officers like him operating unchecked in departments across the country. That night, Lisa and Marcus sat together on their porch watching the stars twinkle above. The air was cool, carrying with it the faint scent of blooming flowers. It was a rare moment of peace after weeks of turmoil. "We did it," Lisa said softly, leaning her head against Marcus's shoulder. But it feels incomplete, doesn't it? Marcus sighed, wrapping an arm around her. Yeah, it does. Taking down one bad cop won't fix everything, but it's a start. And maybe, if enough people keep speaking up, keep pushing for change, we can create something better. Lisa smiled faintly, finding solace in his words. They had taken a stand, not just for themselves, but for future generations. Change wouldn't happen overnight, but every step forward mattered. Together, they vowed to keep fighting, knowing that true justice required patience, persistence, and unwavering hope. As the lights of Oak Ridge twinkled in the distance, Lisa felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would be long and challenging, but she was ready to face it, one step at a time. Weeks turned into months after Officer Greg Miller's firing, and life in Oak Ridge began to settle into a new rhythm. The initial wave of excitement and outrage had subsided, replaced by a steady hum of progress. For Lisa Carter, the journey was far from over, but there was a sense of closure that hadn't existed before. She no longer felt like a victim trapped in someone else's narrative. She was now an advocate, a voice for those who couldn't speak up themselves. The fallout from the investigation had been significant. Not only had Miller faced criminal charges, but his case had also prompted an internal audit of the entire police department. Policies were rewritten, training programs revamped, and accountability measures strengthened. Community leaders praised these changes, though they acknowledged that true transformation would take time. For Marcus, the reforms represented a hard-fought victory, one he hoped would inspire other departments to follow suit. As a police captain, he understood the challenges of balancing law enforcement's responsibilities with public trust. He knew better than anyone that change wouldn't come easily or quickly. But seeing tangible results gave him hope that the system could evolve if enough people pushed for it. Lisa threw herself into advocacy work, channeling her anger and frustration into something productive. She partnered with local organizations to host workshops on racial justice and police accountability. These events brought together residents, activists, and even some officers willing to listen and learn. Through storytelling, panel discussions, and collaborative brainstorming sessions, Lisa helped bridge gaps between communities and law enforcement. Angela remained her closest ally throughout this process, often co-leading initiatives and offering moral support when things got overwhelming. Together, they built a network of like-minded individuals determined to create lasting change. Their efforts weren't always met with open arms. Some critics accused them of being too radical or unrealistic, but Lisa refused to let negativity deter her. One evening, after hosting a particularly successful workshop, Lisa sat down with Angela at a small cafe near the community center. The air smelled faintly of freshly brewed coffee and baked goods, and the soft chatter of patrons created a comforting backdrop. "You're really making a difference," Angela said, sipping her latte. "I can see it in the way people look at you. They respect you." Lisa smiled, though her eyes betrayed a hint of weariness. "It's not just me, though. It's everyone who shows up, who shares their story, who demands better. Change doesn't happen because of one person. It happens because we all push together." Angela nodded thoughtfully. "Still, don't underestimate the power of your voice. You've inspired so many people, including me." Lisa glanced out the window, watching the sun dip below the horizon. Its golden rays bathed the streets in a warm glow, casting long shadows across the pavement. She thought about how far she'd come since that fateful traffic stop. The fear, the anger, the courage it took to stand up and fight back. Each step had been difficult, but each had also been worth it. That night, as Lisa returned home, Marcus greeted her with a warm hug. "How did it go?" he asked, leading her to the couch where they often spent quiet evenings together. "It went well," Lisa replied, sinking into the cushions. "People are starting to understand that this isn't just about pointing fingers. It's about working together to build a safer, fairer city." Marcus smiled, squeezing her hand. "And you're leading the charge. I'm so proud of you." Lisa leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling a deep sense of gratitude, not just for Marcus but for everyone who had supported her along the way. They had faced countless obstacles, endured sleepless nights, and weathered moments of doubt. But through it all, they had stood united. As they sat in silence, the television played softly in the background, showing highlights from recent protests and rallies across the country. Activists held signs demanding justice, while families shared stories of loved ones lost to police brutality. The images served as a reminder that while progress had been made in Oak Ridge, the broader struggle was far from over. "We still have a lot of work to do," Lisa said quietly, breaking the silence. "But I think we're moving in the right direction." Marcus nodded. "Yeah, we are, and we'll keep going until we get there, one step at a time." The next morning, Lisa woke early, energized by a renewed sense of purpose. She opened her laptop and began drafting plans for a new initiative, a mentorship program aimed at connecting young people with mentors in law enforcement. Her goal was simple: to foster understanding and break down barriers before they became insurmountable divides. As she typed, sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the room with a golden hue. Outside, birds chirped cheerfully, and the distant sound of children playing drifted through the air. It was a beautiful day, full of promise and possibility. Later that afternoon, Lisa met with Marcus to discuss the project. His face lit up when she explained her vision. "This is exactly what we need," he said enthusiastically. "Something proactive, something that builds bridges instead of walls." Together they outlined strategies for recruiting participants and securing funding. By the end of the meeting, they had a solid plan and a shared sense of optimism. In the weeks that followed, Lisa threw herself into launching the program. Flyers appeared in schools, community centers, and libraries, inviting young people and officers alike to participate. Interest poured in from all corners of Oak Ridge, proving that there was a real desire for connection and healing. On the day of the program's kickoff event, Lisa stood nervously at the entrance of a large auditorium, watching as attendees filed in. Parents accompanied their children, officers mingled awkwardly with civilians, and volunteers handed out name tags and schedules. The energy in the room was palpable, a mix of curiosity, apprehension, and hope. When it was time to address the crowd, Lisa stepped up to the podium, her heart pounding. "Thank you all for being here today," she began, her voice steady despite her nerves. "This program isn't about erasing the past or pretending everything is perfect. It's about acknowledging our differences and finding common ground. It's about believing that change is possible and working together to make it happen." The audience erupted into applause, their cheers echoing off the walls. Lisa scanned the room, taking in the sea of faces. Young and old, black and white, civilian and officer, all united by a shared vision of a better future. As the event unfolded, conversations blossomed. Officers shared stories of why they joined the force, while young participants talked about their dreams and fears. Laughter mixed with serious discussions, creating a tapestry of human connection. For Lisa, the moment was bittersweet. She thought back to the traffic stop that had started it all, the fear, the humiliation, the anger. But she also thought about how far she'd come, how much she'd grown, and how many lives she'd touched along the way. That evening, as she walked home hand in hand with Marcus, Lisa felt a profound sense of peace. The road ahead would still be challenging, and there would undoubtedly be setbacks. But for the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful, not just for herself, but for everyone fighting for justice. Change was slow, messy, and imperfect. But it was happening, and as long as people like Lisa kept pushing forward, kept speaking out, and kept believing in a brighter tomorrow, anything was possible.